Good day, everyone. My name is Brian McCaffrey. I am the chair of the National Forum on Spirituality and Aging, which is a loosely collaborated ecumenical outreach to try and help the church better understand and its ministry in the second half of life. And decided that it would be wonderful to do some interviews with people who have expertise that might just help us on this pilgrimage of faith. And today, I'm meeting with Ed Zinkwitz. And I've met Ed for the last 3 years around his specialty of retirement. And he has written books. He is a national speaker. And he is a writer. I think I always said that. He's a writer, a speaker, and a presenter. And I invite him now to share with us. Hello, Ed.
Hello, Brian. Thanks for inviting me.
You're more than welcome. And now my question to you in a nutshell. What is it that you offer to you people when you talk about retirement?
Well, in the short form, very short form, I try to help people reimagine, recreate, and re-engage in retirement. Sometimes things get lost in the transition between pillar and post, between when they worked very hard every day to where they want a new lifestyle, they want a transition, they want to do, but they may have some stumbling blocks in that process. But anyway, I try to get them re-engaged in that process for a new part of their life, to start their second, what did you call it, second half? I think that was very nice.
Second half of life. Yeah. Well, then, in many respects, I had some questions here for you. As the real question is, why should anyone pay attention to you?
Well, you eloquently talked about it. I'm sort of an expert at it. I'm first off, I'm very good at retirement. I love retirement. I could do it every day. I've been retired for 5 years, but I started this process before then because my wife retired before me, and we started hunting for resources and couldn't find much. But we delved and we studied and we looked and we found the books and we found the videos and we found the people and we explored that stuff. We've been doing it. I've been doing it particularly for 6 years now. And in particular, I started interviewing people about what surprised them, what steps they took that they didn't think worked out too well, and even some fears of aging. So all of these things surfaced as I interviewed people too. So all of this put together sort of says I have a kind of a graduate course in retirement. I've certainly studied it more than most people, including retirees, do. So I know a lot about what's going on, and I try to help people over some of the humps, like those surprises and those missteps or false starts and those fears. So that's what I do and how I got there.
So what do you think are the big challenges that really people face as they enter into retirement?
Well, I like to think of them in 3 different categories. Number 1 is to be engaged in something meaningful. Hopefully that meaning is to give back. Hopefully it is a purpose-driven understanding of where your life is going, to be engaged again in life. Sometimes we are not as engaged when we work. Sometimes we're overly engaged when we work. And retirement is a change, but we sometimes have a transition to get re-engaged. I also want to see that engagement includes play. I think we need to approach a retirement like we might approach a childhood. I think it's a fun time to be alive, and not just where we have an emphasis on what we're going to get out of it. And I think so the engagement in play is one element. A second element has to do with reconnecting with people and interaction with acquaintances and friends. We often leave people behind at work. Our network of friends at work. We've had so much work is so intense that we don't have time outside of work to establish friendships, and that becomes a source. And when we turn our back on that, we lose that. We also lose what I call the water cooler. We don't have that place anymore where we could meet friends, where they greet us at the door. People just don't come through our living room hunting for a water cooler. And the third thing then is to be able to keep up. I think it's very important that we refocus our efforts on being active, on eating well, on taking care of ourselves as the third element. So being engaged, trying to take care of our social networks and friendships, and being engaged socially, and being taking care of ourselves are the three key elements I see as a focus for retirement.
Well, is there a particular person or an example that you can say how you've worked through this with someone?
Well, yeah, I think the best example is the first example, and that was with my wife. That's how we came to discover this process and problem in the first place. My wife retired before I. She took a contract with her when she retired to do a project. Now, what that meant was that she wasn't doing 6 projects, she was just doing 1. She didn't have staff to supervise. She didn't have to go to meetings to plan meetings. And so she talks about that period of her life that she did her best work because she really could focus on one project, but she didn't have to do it full time either. So what she did was to start a program of picking up my grandson after school. We still do that today. It became another element of her life. She started gardening more, which she absolutely loves. And she started painting the house. The joke around our house is, when are you going to retire, Ed? And I would say, well, I'd be a fool to retire until my wife got the house painted. So here we are. She has these things that are in balance. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, and not a lot of one thing. She loved it. She did her best work. But at the end of the 2-year contract, when it was done, it surprised her because she didn't get another contract. She felt a real sense of loss. She found out that she really missed work, that she liked doing what she wanted. She spent 30 years doing what she wanted. What was the world coming to that she couldn't do what she loved? It was a crisis in identity. What am I going to be when I grow up? Who am I going to be? And this challenged us to help her re-engage. So that's where the re-engagement came from. It made us look forward to re-imaging what it is her life was going to be about. Of course, most of that work was hers. Well, I was still not retired. And when I watched that happen, I became convinced that I was not going to retire until I had something to retire to. And so most of the programs and titles that I come up with all have that phrase in it, of retire to, as an emphasis. So she helped us discover that things aren't always easy in retirement, or like the advertisements are on TV where we can just walk off into the sunset. There can be bumps. So instead of asking people, how's your retirement going? We started asking interesting questions like, what surprised you? Because my wife certainly had a surprise. And we got all kinds of different answers. So what we found out was that there's a transition involved. When we started studying what that transition looked like, lo and behold, we began to see other people that were going through different kinds of transitions, different kinds of processes, and we found a whole depth of exploration and resourcing needed to help people with that transition. So our first example was our best example in terms of getting started to help people through reimagining where they're going to be in retirement.
So it's not, you have a program that one size fits all, but you work with people to really design what fits best for them.
Oh, absolutely. I also work with people to help them recognize the kinds of things that can happen. What are the surprises that we've identified? What are the false starts that people make? What are the fears of aging that they encounter? because if you know those things are coming around the corner, then you can watch for the signs. You can take steps to avoid or replace. You can do things that are proactive in caring for yourself so that these kinds of disappointments and discouragements don't happen. So yeah, one side definitely does not fit all. You know, I'm very active in my retirement and follow this, this writing routine and speaking routine. And other people look at me and say, "Well, you haven't retired; you're still working." And I don't say that you have to have that same lifestyle in order to be well retired. I at all. I think it's up to you. And the problem is, how do we know what is good for you? So I help people discover that, help people make good decisions. How do we do that? So it's all kinds of tools, assessments, and so on to help move forward.
Well, what is the first step?
Well, the first step in terms of getting involved with what I do and how I do it is to go to my website. The website is retire-2.com, and you might want to put a link on your website with that, retire-2.com. That's retire to, like I'm going to retire to play and purpose. So it's TO. Go there, sign up for my newsletter. You'll get three newsletters a month, sometimes 4. But basically, I share an article, I share a video, and I share a blog about something important to retirement. Right now, the blogs I share every month have to do with well-being and becoming physically fit and nutrition, that focus. The articles that I share are all different kinds of things. This morning, the email came out with an article about I'm ready to get out of jail. This job of mine is a prison. I want to jump out. And it talks about why that's happening, when that happens, and what to do. So it's all kinds of activities about retirement. The videos, interesting video last was a video about what millennials think of old age. And they introduced millennials to some older people and opened their eyes to what old really means. It was really a cute video. And so it's kind of all over the place. My goal is to get you to reflect, to think, to engage your mind in what is this life all about? So that's a great place to start, is to join my newsletter community, and you'll find out what's going on and get some valuable information too.
And I will be able to say that Ed has done some wonderful interviews with people along the way that are just fascinating to hear. It's because of Ed that I'm doing this, that I wanted to add this to my website as well. And so I thank you, Ed, for being the first and being the one who inspired me. So,
well, you're really very welcome. So if you go to retire2.com, you can go look up Brian McCaffrey's interview and see what he had to say about being a chaplain in a nursing home. That is very enlightening interview about these ladies that challenged his understanding of faith at the beginning of his chaplaincy. Yeah. I love that.
Well, thank you, Ed. Have a
You're
great
welcome. Thank you, Brian.